Most communities fade out. A few ignite. What does it take to build something lasting from the heart? Well, Sarah Hempel's behind-the-scenes truths on leading genuine, human-first spaces may surprise you and can change how you see belonging and leadership forever. Stay tuned. Talk About Your Community is next. Kalisa, roll the opening. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you may happen to be. You've tuned into Talk About Your Community, the show where we bring in a variety of guests with a variety of perspectives around what it takes to build online spaces that matter, that connect people, that lift up our ability to just make meaningful connections and friendships over great distances together, as well as what it means to come together in person. So I'm glad you're here. If you've tuned in for the first time, welcome. This is a live interactive show, and we always welcome your comments and questions in the course of the live stream. We, in fact, promote a few of them onto the screen as we go. Today, we're going to be talking with Sarah Hempel, and Sarah is an amazing person that I met during the recent Global Loop event for community builders. She's an advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. She leads the Blanchard community, which has over 7,500 members, over 230 events in 114 or more countries. She's experienced in talent and leadership development, learning program design, and needs analysis. She's passionate about creating inclusive spaces where everyone feels valued and empowered. And she has some frameworks maybe to share with us today. And her background includes roles at Amazon, K-12 education, and organizational consulting. She's known for her practical approaches to growth, innovation, and community building, and frequently speaks on the topics of empathy, trust, and actionable leadership. Sarah, welcome to the show. It's so good to see you.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Really excited to be diving into this conversation. Ever since I heard your talk at the Global Loop event, I said, I've got to get you on the show to talk a little bit about your framework and conversational capacity and all these concepts around the work that you do with Blanchard, as well as with Carver County Pride. And would love to hear a little bit more about your journey as a community builder. I always start off with this question. What's your origin story? What was the moment that you knew that you were meant to be building communities for people?
Oh gosh, I mean, my origin story, when I was a little girl, I knew I wanted to grow up and be a teacher. And that's kind of, creating a community of sorts within a classroom, if you really think about it. And that's what I did. I went into education for just over 15 years, taught kindergarten through third grade, so like 5 to 8-year-olds. And then in more recent years, I departed from public education and jumped into the corporate world. And first, I was in talent development, and then I landed at Blanchard. And that actually came about because a friend of mine said, I'm building this community, and I think you'd be great at helping us. And I was like, well, relationships are what I like to say are my superpower, connecting people. And so I was like, sure, let me take a dabble. I didn't really know what I was doing, if you will. And first couple weeks in, I loved it. I fell in love with connecting with people, getting to help them start conversations. I like to say I like connecting people to people and people to resources. I like meeting new folks like you. And part of the Blanchard community, I get to meet folks from all around the world every day. And so I think I didn't know it at the time when I started in education that I would land in this community space, but reflecting back, everything I have done in my career really has been about creating a sense of community, a sense of belonging, helping people to feel seen, heard, and valued. So I don't know if there's a point.
Oh, that's great. A wonderful experience that has led you here. We all end up in community building, I think, by accident, and then decide
Yes.
it's for us. So totally valid perspective on that. So for those who maybe don't know, what is Blanchard?
Yeah, so Blanchard, if you've heard of Ken Blanchard, I'm just gonna Ken Blanchard, this guy right here. We have a new book. His biography just came out. He's the original author of The 1 Minute Manager. Maybe you've heard that. If not, Blanchard is a global leadership development organization. And so we have solutions for everyone from individual contributors all the way up through C-suite, leadership development, coaching. And from that, we created the Blanchard community because we wanted to support leaders from all around the world at every level across every industry. So, you want me to dive a little deeper into the community or not yet?
No, I think it'd be great to give an overview of it. I kind of did a little bit of a teaser that you've got, over 8,000 members and
Yeah.
you do all these events and you're worldwide. I mean, that perspective and especially working with a community that spans countries is always interesting because, people perceive things differently in different cultures. And so the sensitivity to that, that has to be an amazing and challenging everyday experience.
It totally is. And it's been, I love to learn. And I think a lot of folks that land in community love to learn in that continuous learning journey. And one thing that I get to do is learn about other cultures from these folks in the community. And so I've got some great colleagues in New Zealand who have really grown their New Zealand group within the community, and getting to talk to them about holidays and cultural differences, the Western world versus how things are perceived in New Zealand, and how we can support everyone in the community. So kind of coming back up to the 5,000 foot view, like you said, over 8,000 members, 114 countries. We have created the Blanchard community as a space for leaders to connect, learn, and grow. That's our tagline. And so we have lots of great forum discussions where you can learn from one another. We get to talk about global commemorative events. We get to ask questions like, what does AI look like in the US versus Europe versus Asia? Events. We have little groups within the community. So if you love book club, we've got a book club for you where we talk about leadership books. So it's a fun space, and it's free.
And it's free to join, which is amazing. So so we had the link up here on the screen a minute ago. I'll pop it back up again before we go maybe a couple of times here. But so as someone that has worked in a variety of communities over the years, I think that by virtue of the fact that we're managing or we're involved with hosting these spaces for people online, we tend to absorb some of the understanding and learn ourselves, from being part of these communities. I'm kind of wondering, like with a leadership focused community like Blanchard, how has your perspective on leadership shifted because of this work?
Oh, that is a good question. It has, through the community, but also through things that I've learned with Blanchard. I used to think that leadership was more of that, like having the clarity and the decisiveness, and you have to, if you're the leader, you have to know what's next and how to do it. You have to have all the answers. And the reality is it's not. There is some clarity and some decisiveness that's necessary, but without curiosity, you can't go very far. And so at Blanchard, we talk about a framework called conversational capacity. And in that, you have to balance candor with curiosity. And so my leadership lens through community, through Blanchard, has shifted because I've learned to ask more questions. I've learned that it's okay to not have all of the answers, that being curious is a really good thing. I used to think asking questions might be the annoying thing, but it's okay. It's actually really good to ask questions because you start to see and understand multiple perspectives, which you're clearly going to have in a global community space.
That lit up something in my brain. One of my recent guests, I think I'm going to get this right. If not, my apologies. But so Dr. Deborah Clary was one of our recent guests on, and she was talking about curiosity as a core driver of success in leaders and in organization.
Yeah.
And so that ability to foster a culture of curiosity comes
Yeah.
from the top, from
Yes.
leaders to be able to build that. So
Yeah.
that's a wonderful insight and a reinforcing one of the themes of the show that's emerged over the course of the year here. So thanks for underscoring that.
Absolutely.
So as someone who came into community building from the education world, what would you say, like, were there some things about community building that you maybe didn't expect, but you've come to love or tolerate?
Gosh, let me think. I've always been like, prior to COVID, I've always been this like go, 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 go. Have to have something to do, have to be busy. Busy is good. And honestly, I think that community has kind of taught me that the quiet moments are okay. The time in between, you host a big event, it's fun, it's great, you're on camera, you're engaging people and really living out that mission of connecting people, helping them grow. But I'm loving the quiet moments when I can watch the connections happen in the community as it's grown and scaled. And I can see people like connecting with each other and sharing a resource. And that's really that's what community is all about. That's what we want to build. It just took time to get there. And so I think it's the quiet moments that I love, because I'm seeing the success.
I love that perspective. I think it is one of the most powerful things about asynchronous online communities. And
Yeah.
so, as I think about like the differences between like a noisy Slack channel, even
Yeah.
though it is kind of asynchronous, and a discussion forum or a social feed, I think the pace of conversation is more relaxed in those kinds of tech venues, and just that ability to reflect and offer our best selves in answers is extremely powerful. And it's one of the things that keeps me coming back to community. And what I have often said is it's fulfillment of the original promise of the internet to connect us all better, right?
Yeah.
I maintain an obstinate optimism about the potential of the internet to actually be a pro-social, kind of tool, as much as it has been used for less savory extractive purposes in our world. So which brings me, I guess, to I think one of the cores of our conversation here, which is like a topic that you talked about at the Global Loop event, which I was grateful to have an opportunity to attend and kind of learn, from various presenters, at the event. You talked a lot about conflict and empathy as a theme in your work, and I'd love for you to maybe reflect a little bit about, the idea of conflict as feedback, and maybe what leading through conflict might look like in practice. I mean, maybe we can get into your empathy framework and some of that.
Okay. So I think you said conflict as feedback, not failure. And that was a point I made at the Loop that resonated with a lot of folks after the fact that reached out to me. And it really is, I would say, an assumed constraint is the terminology we use at Blanchard, where you assume that conflict is bad. Because historically, that term conflict, war, conflict, like, it is inherently an icky term. But if you shift your mindset and you think about conflict as a way of providing feedback, and you lean in with that curiosity that I shared about, that's where you start to open the conversation. And I think today, more than ever before in our history, we need to open the conversations and listen to what others have to say. And so, I'll dive into the leading with empathy framework in a minute, but leading with empathy means really listening, leaning in with that curiosity to ask questions, to understand, to not just get defensive and shut down. And so when you think about leading through conflict in practice, it's less about fixing the problem, I say in quotes, but it's more about staying curious, staying involved in the conversation, staying connected as part of that community, and getting comfortable in the uncomfortable, right? And when you do that, I think we're going to solve a lot more problems because we've opened up the dialogue.
I appreciate that. And it resonates with some recent experience. It resonates also with some conversations with another guest we've recently had on the show, Dr. Ruth Diaz, who did the Troll Project and talks about, empathy and actually heading off conflict before it maybe happens, or sort of recognizing the signs of unusual behaviors and sort of being in there. From my own experiences, I have to say, like, when I have someone that is unhappy, where they are, complaining about something, or they are, they're being in kind of an almost open conflict or discord with other members in the community, my first impulse is, I wonder if they had a bad day, which of course everybody can. But I also tend to see it as that conflict as a kind of care, like if they didn't care about it, they wouldn't complain about it.
Right. Yeah.
But I guess my tension point with this is where I struggle is there've been plenty of cases where someone has been sort of attacking, in a community setting. As a moderator, as a community manager, I've jumped in and tried to respond with empathy and kind of gotten the kick in the teeth, a number of times. Like, how do you deal with something like that? Like, how can you be productive? Because obviously the work that we do, there is emotional labor involved with it. And it's easy to be deeply affected by these things because we put so much care and attention into the community environments we're trying to create, that that's something that can kind of affect you at the end of the day. It can kind of haunt you overnight.
Emotional baggage.
Yeah. Right.
I think for me, I mean, having when you think of that emotional baggage, having people that you can trust and you can talk to, that you can kind of debrief through that, is super important. One of my colleagues calls it her board of directors. Not literally the board of directors, but it's her people that she can go to and have these conversations with. It's the folks that remind you that one conversation is not like representative of your entire community, whatever that space may be. And I know this isn't going to be like a completely scalable opportunity, but one thing I try to do when we, with my nonprofit, so I'm a board chair for an LGBTQ nonprofit that's local here. And in our community, our social community, we get a lot of really conflicting comments and conversations. And when we're able to, we invite people to come and just sit down and talk with us. Sit down, like, let's grab coffee. Again, that's a local group. We can do that in person, but I would say even virtually, I've done it where I've said, hey, I would love to hop on a Zoom call with you. Do you have availability to connect with me? And one person recently that I did this with was in New Zealand, and they're like, well, I don't have time that works with you. And I'm like, you tell me a time, I'll make it work. Even if it's late in my day, early in my day, I'll make it work. And we hopped on that call. And the reality was, even though 3 emails ago, they said that they were leaving the community and they're done because this is confusing. And I don't, they actually just were a little confused about where to go and how to access the content that they wanted. But they had thrown their hands up and were just like, this is a waste of my time. And this community isn't great. And I'm like, but it is, it's my baby. And when we had that face to face and I could see where the frustration was, we could talk through what they were looking for, what they weren't finding. It really shook out and to be like what I would call a misunderstanding, not even a conflict, but it felt so icky from some of the words in the email. And then we resolved it human to human, as face to face as you can get from Minnesota to New Zealand.
Yes, yes. There's so many things I love about that. So I love that you phrased it as human to human, because I think there's a tendency, especially if like in the community you are listed as community manager, because
Mhm.
it implies hierarchy and
Yep.
authority, in that role. That like anytime you respond to something and you try to respond with empathy, it can come off as feeling a little corporate if you're not careful.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's a tricky balance to strike. But I think like what's powerful about that approach that you suggested, even if you're not in a position to meet face to face, to suggest like, hey, can we have a Zoom call, or can we have a phone call even,
Yeah.
that emphasizes the human. Like I am a human talking to a human. Like this is not me as a corporate drone, you know,
Right.
enacting a set of banhammer protocols, get you
Yeah.
to go in line. You're like, that's not what we're about. Like, this is supposed to be a supportive place. Now, you may disagree with elements of what's here, but like, I, as a human, want to have a conversation with you about
Yeah.
what you're upset about. And like, I
Yeah.
may not be able to change that thing that you're
Right.
upset
Yeah.
about, but I want you to feel heard and seen,
Yes.
in that. And that's sometimes that's a tough thing to convey in text, where it feels like
Yeah.
the emotional contagion can escalate a lot more easily,
Yeah.
when it's just text to text.
For sure. And it's text to text, things are so misunderstood. I can send an email that I am pouring my heart and soul into, and I'm saying it with all the love in the world, and it's received in anger. Like they've misconstrued the tone somewhere. I mean, I know I've done it with emails before, and then I talk to the person and they're like, that's not what I meant at all. And I'm like, okay, I'm glad I came and talked to
Yeah.
you, because that was kind of festering back here.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? Like, I gotta say, like sometimes it is a matter of just that person to person chemistry does not work. Like
Yeah.
there are cases where you just gotta cut bait and say, okay, I'm sorry. That's we're not going to come to an agreement here, about this. I
Yeah.
hope this conversation would have gone better. It didn't.
Yeah.
If you come back to this after reflection and we can have a conversation about it, I would definitely be open to doing that. But
Right.
I love that approach to de-escalating
Hmm.
conflict, through that more direct through the more direct modes of communication that let us um, convey more
Yeah.
than we can, on the text side of things. That's wonderful. So now help me. I know that you talked a bit about this sort of the empathy framework. Can you
Yes.
describe what that is a little bit?
Yeah. So the empathy framework really is about, there's a mindset and a skill set. It comes from our course called Leading with Empathy. And the mindset is about curiosity, helpfulness, and self-awareness. And those are all three really important, because, curiosity, I've mentioned that, you've heard me say that several times. You have to have a sincere interest in trying to understand the other person's feelings, goals, experiences. Like, I think we can all agree, we don't know exactly what it feels like to walk in someone else's shoes, and lived experiences play a huge role in how these conversations or conflicts work themselves out. So curiosity, really desiring to know more. Helpfulness, is just this, exactly what it says, a generous intention to really be of service to others. So you're trying to help work through this, solve the problem, communicate. And self-awareness, the ability to understand your own feelings and how you perceive others. I know, just because of past trauma in my life, that there's certain groups of people that, while I shouldn't stereotype them together, I know that I naturally have a different reaction. And so I have to like check that bias. And it's important to be aware of that. So that's the mindset. And then you move into the skill set, which is how do you actually put this into practice to lead with empathy? You communicate intentionally, you feel their feelings, and you respond thoughtfully. Communicate intentionally, you're checking in, you're asking the questions, you're exposing or exploring that curiosity. Feel their feelings. It doesn't mean that you take on someone else's feelings, someone else's anger. But you're trying to, again, lead with curiosity and understand as much of what their perspective is that you possibly can. And then responding thoughtfully, you're really trying to avoid overreacting. Um, it's exactly what I said. You're thoughtful in how you respond to the person.
In practice, for me, that's often meant not replying right away after
Yes.
I get a hot take, from someone.
Yes.
Just to say,
Yep.
okay, you know what? I'm going to let this percolate for 6 hours, 8 hours a day, however long I can
Yep.
let it go, and then get back. And maybe, like, if I've got a team, and I've done this with some communities that I have and do manage, to confer with the team and say, like, I'm thinking of responding in this way. What do you think?
Yes.
Or even if you don't have that, like, we've got some wonderful, usable AI tools, that
Yeah.
you can use as kind of a coach. Like, I wouldn't use it to do more than maybe draft a reply,
Mhm.
and to think about, but like, better yet, turn on the microphone, say, like, okay, here's how I want to respond to this. I need to say it in a nicer way. I need to be more thoughtful and empathetic about this. Can you help me formulate a reply? And then just do, like, a verbal dump, on things.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
I've definitely done stuff like that, in the past, and I've gotten some pretty good results from that. Like,
Yeah.
at least it helps you to ameliorate or sort of soft some of the rough edges of how you might want to reply to something,
Yeah.
and kind of talks you down from the ledge, because
For sure. I've used AI too to here's what I want to say. Can you challenge me back? Are there
yeah,
is there some bias in here that I'm not recognizing that you see? And
yeah,
so almost getting AI to play that devil's advocate with me. Like,
yeah, yeah.
push back on me and let me know what your thoughts are about this email.
At least, like, if you have nothing else, that
Mhm.
then you can kind of look at that as a tool. Like, an AI has its own ethical and
Mhm.
racial and, other kinds of biases that are built
Yeah.
into the tool. But if you're engaging it in that context of conversation, it might be a little bit better at
Yeah.
seeing some of those
Yeah.
things, to go with that. That's really interesting. So you gave the presentation, you presented the empathy framework at the Global Loop event. I'm wondering, like, what kind of reactions, what kind of feedback did you get? Has it changed sort of
Yeah.
how you think about things at all? I'm really
Yeah.
curious.
Feedback was great. It was a super fun session. I actually had a lot of people reach out afterwards through LinkedIn and said that they really loved the reframing of that I think you mentioned it earlier, of conflict being feedback, not failure. And it was a good reminder for me about how important it is to shift our mindset, to look for the good in things. My therapist told me once that our brains are hardwired as humans to take the path of least resistance. And I think in terms of this, the path of least resistance sometimes feels like putting up our defenses when we see or hear conflict instead of leaning in with that curiosity. And so it was a good reminder to level set, to pause, lean in with curiosity. Um, and also, when you think about it, like, I think I said this before, we need spaces where we can have open conversation, which sometimes looks like conflict.
Mhm.
Um, and that is part of the process of helping people connect human to human, because we're not living in this echo chamber. I mean, sometimes it feels like I am, when I look at my social media feed and
Yeah.
it's what I want, but that's my personal life. The reality is we need a space where we can have open dialogue, lean in with curiosity, not throw up our defenses every time we see something we maybe don't agree with.
I'd love to lean into that a little bit, the idea of conflict, because my personal reflections or experiences around this have been, like, to try to reframe my thinking around it. I participated last year in a panel series by a friend of mine, by the name of Sai Alhir. Hello, Sai, if you're out there listening.
Mhm.
Who's just an amazing thinker about anti-fragility, resilience,
Mhm.
agility, as concepts, and what's out there. And the panel we were on last year was a reflection on the impact of Sun Tzu's The Art of War on our
Hmm.
work. And all of the panelists, I think, were quick to frame their experience, their lived experience with this text that is ostensibly about warfare and conflict,
Hmm.
in terms of their business lives or their personal lives, and thinking about conflict as something, thinking about not warfare as killing other people, but as any kind of conflict, that it's something like that is quintessentially human.
Hmm.
And 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 I think a lot of them, and it's sort of the way that I look at it is conflict is good as long as it's something that promotes growth
Yes.
and thought and curiosity.
Hmm.
Um, and like, if you think about the stresses that affect us, Sai talks about stress and something called eustress.
Hmm.
Eustress is like good stress.
Hmm.
Things like, think about things like the wind that forces plants, trees to sway and makes them more
Yep.
resilient as a
Hmm.
result of it. Conflict, properly seen, can maybe be something that actually strengthens us and makes
Hmm.
us and so I think like we tend to like fall into these binary thinking patterns about like, oh,
Yeah.
it's either good or bad.
Hmm.
There can be good conflict, and I think like things like fighting about ideas is worth doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how we learn from each other. That's how we connect and get outside of that echo chamber, outside of those, hearing the same thoughts and ideas shared over and over. And I and that's where I talk about shifting the mindset. Like, yeah, you're right. There is good conflict.
Mhm.
Even though the word inherently sounds really bad.
Well, so let me be slightly subversive
Okay.
about this. Aren't the communities we build, aren't they supposed to be people with the same values and ideas? Like, what's this about? Like, conflict? How can I have conflict if I'm just seeing my own tribe, in this
Yeah.
space?
Because I think, we're really lucky in the Blanchard community to not have experienced a lot of this yet. We're still a newer community, being we're about 2.5 years old. But the reality is, when you bring together 8,000 people from around the world
Yeah.
in industries spanning everything, from leaders, from individual contributors, all the way up to CEOs and founders of organizations, you are bound to have different values, views, beliefs. But at the end of the day, the community is about leadership. And so that is the commonality that brings all of these people together, is connecting, learning, and growing around leadership. And I think learning from one another, whether it's conflict, whether it's a discussion, opening of different, sharing those different values, that's where the real learning is going to happen, when people are open to have those conversations. Because watching, like, I've been in events where I watch folks and they're across different industries and they're like, gosh, I've never thought of it that way, because in banking we do it this way, this is how it happens in the finance world.
Yeah.
And then they hear someone from a coffee shop owner, share something, and it's not necessarily conflict in this example, but they're sharing two different ways to approach the same situation as leaders.
Yeah.
And neither of them had thought of the other situation previously.
I absolutely love that, and it's one of the things, like, I've always felt, if I had a superpower, it's my ability to see seemingly unconnected things and draw
Mm,
parallels, between them, or to learn new perspectives, from them. I think that really that's one of the essential elements of creativity. People
mhm.
that a lot of people tend to say like, well, I'm not a creative person. I don't feel like a creative person. I think we all are. I think
Yeah.
we've learned to self-edit ourselves around these things. And there's just such an opportunity, if we allow ourselves to have it, to think about all the different lives we have, all the different communities we participate in,
Yeah.
and how one informs the other on a regular
Mhm.
basis that's there.
Yeah. Oh, so many communities that we're a part of. I'm actually working on a piece for Leadify, which is Blanchard's newest mobile app that we just launched. It's a year old, and it is to empower the next generation of leaders. And one of the things that I'm writing about is community and where do people find community. And as I'm making this list for myself of like, where have I found community? The Jeep world. I just bought a Jeep. And, I don't know if you're familiar with the Jeep wave, but as you're driving down the road and you pass another Jeep, you do the Jeep wave. And
I
I'm
did
like,
not know this. That's amazing.
I don't even know these people, but random strangers are waving at me and the joy it brings me. No clue if our values, morals, anything align, but by golly, we're part of this Jeep community and we wave and it just brightens your day. Like you just see the other
Yeah.
person smile.
Yeah.
So community is everywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think about like all of the different, the different versions of ourselves we try on in those different communities,
Right.
all of the different ways of being and seeing and doing.
Yeah.
And it's all us. Like,
Yeah. Same person. Yeah.
yeah. But we're maybe trying on, different elements of ourselves, taking risks in certain communities that we wouldn't take in other places.
Yes.
And I think that's maybe one of the essential value drivers of having the kinds of communities that we're talking about, these online communities, not big social media networks.
Yeah.
Having these big tent communities, like the theme of leadership, like you have for Blanchard, is an opportunity for people to come together and try on a set of ways of being, as opposed to in social media, you're opening yourself up to everybody by expressing like one way of being. Like I am probably a much more edited, self-conscious personality on LinkedIn than I am in some of the communities, like the Community Consultants Collective, where I feel like I'm kind of a different person, in those spaces.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I mean, I think about just Blanchard community, my professional space there, and then my professional space as a board chair of a nonprofit. And even within those two communities, I definitely show up differently.
And I think maybe just to kind of put a period on that sentence, I think that it helps us by having all of those different places where we can express different versions of ourselves. I think it's an enabler for us to lead more enriched lives. To have those spaces for ourselves. So I'm kind of winding up to this idea of, sort of your experiences with Blanchard and with your and with the LGBTQ plus community that you help run. What is it that, in your view, like what are the markers of a healthy community then? How do you track that? How do you quantify it? How do you communicate it to your leadership team? These are the big questions that I think
$1 million question, Todd. I've been trying for 2.5 years to figure out exactly what data do I want to share upwards to show that we have a healthy community within the Blanchard community. And I think what I've realized is a healthy community isn't necessarily loud or fast growing, but it's consistent. And so looking at consistently, we're gaining new members. Consistently, we're having people contribute to the forum discussions. Consistently, we're having month over month returning users that are, finding value and coming back to the platform. Consistently, we're having a growth in the number of folks that register and attend our events, right? So it's that consistency. People are showing up, they're listening, they're contributing. I think that's the consistency is probably the key. I know that's not your like ROI answer.
No. And so like, our ROI is not necessarily dollars and cents.
One way. Yes.
It's what are the outcomes?
Yeah.
As a dear friend of mine reminded me of in the past week, like, what are the outcomes that mean success for an organization? And they may be operational, they may be value laden, they may be attitudinal, they may be cultural, but like they're not necessarily fiscal in nature, and it's limiting, to look at it in just that way. Have you ever had an experience with executive leadership? And you feel free to protect the names of the innocent, with this, but where they maybe had an expectation of 50% growth in 3 months, around a community build out, and maybe how would you address that set of expectations with them?
So I can be really just transparent. I haven't had that encounter because we're really lucky that our C-suite is 110% behind community. It was actually Scott Blanchard, our CEO's idea to start this community because he,
Bless him, bless him. That's
right?
great.
Like he saw the vision. He understands the value of community. He was at trade shows, and this was before my time at Blanchard. It's a story I always heard. He would be at trade shows like ATD, Association for Talent Development,
Yeah.
and the Blanchard booth, folks are coming up to meet his dad and get signatures, and oh, we're here to see the Blanchards. This is great. And he's looking and he's like, okay, where's my next buyer? And all of a sudden he says, I realized I've got hundreds and hundreds of raving fans right in front of me. What are we doing to continue this relationship and nurture that? And that's where the idea of community was born, to nurture the relationship with our raving fans and then to continue to grow those relationships. And so for me, I've been able to share upwards what I like to call my qualitative data, the storytelling, where I can make a slide and I can say, here's this community member that I met, and here's kind of their journey and what happened and how the community has impacted their life. Or here's this community member who took something from the community and went back and had a lunch and learn at their business and shared it with 65 other people. And so I can tell those stories, and thankfully, gratefully, they're highly valued within our organization. And so I think my advice to others that get challenged with that would be to find the stories. Find the stories. Like you said, it doesn't have to be dollars and cents always. It can't always be that.
Yeah, that's it's a wonderful testament to the orientation of the work culture that you're in, that they do that. And I think it's something that I think all community professionals need to think about, is how they're communicating what success looks like to their C-suite, and understanding what the C-suite wants or expects, from you. So that requires, I think, maybe an employment of the empathy framework towards your executive team as well. Curiosity, helpfulness, and self-awareness. Like I think all three of those are worth checking. Like, am I asking the right questions? Am I offering the right information to the C-suite team that is going to help them? Is it going to be helpful to them to understand how successful the community is based on the things that I'm communicating, back to them? And am I aware of my own biases and blind spots around how I prefer to communicate things versus maybe what they want? Am I being stubborn, in how I'm approaching this? So I love that framework. It is a multi-use tool. It is a multitasker.
It is. And in personal and professional life, right? Like all over the place.
Yeah. So do you have any advice for somebody maybe just getting started with their community career?
I've got two things. One, start small and stay human. I talk a lot about that human to human connection. Don't think, like I did, that you can grow a community to 5,000 people overnight. Really build for connection, because when you build for connection, that's when that organic growth happens, where they start telling everyone about why they should come join the community as well. So that's one. My other one is ask questions. And make connections with people in this community space. At Blanchard, Ken Blanchard likes to say, none of us is as smart as all of us. And I think that power of collective knowledge among community folks like you here at Clocktower Advisors, other community collectives, that's where I'm learning so much. And even though some community leaders are leading alumni networks or other types of community, it kind of goes back to what I said about the Blanchard community. Our center is around leadership, but we span different industries. connect with community leaders across industries, across styles of community, because that's really where you're going to learn, and you'll see how other people are doing things, and like it might spark a light bulb for you. So stay curious.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I'll ask one of my lightning round questions as we're
Okay.
getting a little low on time here. If there were a term or a piece of jargon that you would like to banish forever from the community lexicon or the business lexicon, what's top of mind? I always spring it on people, so that
I mean, ROI. No, I'm just kidding. I understand the rationale for ROI, but I think sometimes when you use that term ROI, everyone instantly thinks dollars and cents. And I think it's really important to remember that that impact metric can also be a piece of the story. The storytelling can be part of your ROI.
Well, when I hear it, I love that. I love that. When I hear it, I like, there's a little voice in the back of my head. I think it's Admiral Akbar from the Star Wars things, like, it's a trap, right? Because I think often where I've bumped into it from time to time with some executive leaders that throw that back in the face of a community team, it's almost like I'm just shutting you down because I know you can't answer this question. But like, I don't know what you're defining as your ROI. Like that's something that organizationally needs to be a conversation. And if the leadership team has not done an adequate job of communicating what success looks like to the rest of the organization, that's their failure to do it. So I think that connected, empathetic community professionals will ask the questions needed to dig into what that value is, what that return on effort, return on emotion, return on investment, like, let's fill in the blanks here a little bit so that I can give them what's going to be helpful, to them, and determine how central the community is to the success of the organization.
Right.
Sarah, I think you are absolutely brilliant. I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you for sharing your framework.
Yes.
Thank you for being on the show. Where can people learn more about your work?
Yeah. BlanchardCommunity.com. I would love for you to join me there. It's free for anyone, self-leader, like I said, all the way up to C-suite. So join me in the community. You can check out the Blanchard Leadership Marketplace. That is right there on the bottom of your screen. And that's where you can explore things like our Propel subscription, where you can access leading with empathy, conversational capacity, some of the frameworks that I mentioned today, and LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with folks because I'm a connector. So please hit that connect button.
You definitely are. And Sarah, I really, truly appreciate you spending time on the show here with me today. Would love to have you back again anytime. Absolutely. You want to talk about like any newest offerings from Blanchard or things that you're doing in the community front.
Wonderful.
Any kind of other events or things coming up that you want to talk about, please just share them out with me. I'll blast them out on LinkedIn for you.
Absolutely. Well, we have lots of networking events coming up. So again, check out the community, virtual and in person. It's a little late at the moment, but right now in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, we have an in-person community coffee. And so we pop those up a few times throughout the year as well.
Absolutely terrific. Quick shout out to my friend and colleague, Matthias Vleeming, who tuned in from the Netherlands. Check us out. This is probably getting into his evening now. But great to see you, my friend. Glad that you chatted a hello here. For those of you who have not already, I would ask humbly, if you enjoyed this interview, we have many other great interviews as well that you can check out on our back catalog on the Clocktower Advisors company page here in LinkedIn, or by going to our YouTube channel for Clocktower Advisors. The entire back catalog is there, all of our live streams, plus a lot of really cool other recorded interviews that we've done over time. And if you prefer more bite-sized kinds of learnings, we divide them up into short reels afterwards and share those as well, as we will have, from our conversation here with you here today, Sarah. For those of you who prefer to do your listening on the go while you're exercising, walking, out in nature, whatever, we do also syndicate the show on your favorite podcasting networks, Apple, Spotify, etc. So I'd encourage you to follow us out there as well. And again, please, if you are watching this in the replay and you've got questions, comments, ideas you want to share, please share them in the comments. I try to respond to everybody who has something to say there, and would love to hear from you as well. We have, I think, another recorded show we're going to be dropping here right before Thanksgiving holiday in the U.S., and that is to be announced pretty soon. But I'm very excited about the interview coming up. I'm just going to drop this little teaser here. And then in early December, one of our last shows of the year, we are coming up on our 100th episode of Talk About Your Community. And it's going to be an open house. Any of our past guests, including Sarah, would be welcome to drop in, say hello, talk about something you're grateful for, in the season. And it is non-denominational. It is just hey, come by, say hello, and tell us what's on your mind. Just going to be kind of fun. The equivalent of digital phone booth stuffing, which I guess was a fad in the 50s. So, anyways. In the meantime, I hope that you take some time for yourselves, get away from the screen, walk outside, breathe in the fresh air or the crisp wintry air, as the case may be, here in the Northern Hemisphere. And we will be back in a couple of weeks with another episode of Talk About Your Community. Sarah, thanks again for being a guest.
Thank you.